Imagine boarding a flight, minding your own business, only to be accused, restrained, and humiliated, all because of how you look. This is the shocking, true story of Major Michael Harris, a Pentagon operative, and the moment that changed everything. Stay tuned. You won't believe what happens next.
A secure satellite phone rested on the tray table of seat 14A, silent, untouched, and programmed to connect solely to the Pentagon's strategic command. Michael Harris stayed calm as the flight crew encircled him. He remained steady when they demanded his bag, and when the white woman next to him labeled him a danger. He had confronted insurgents, advised generals, and provided insights on terrorist networks. But none of that counted here. At 30,000 feet, without his uniform, he was just a quiet black man with a composure deemed suspicious. Then he placed the call. Soon after, air traffic control issued an urgent directive, altering the flight's course. The occupant of seat 14A was a senior federal advisor, traveling to deliver critical Pentagon intelligence. What started as racial profiling had sparked a cascade of federal repercussions, with the full response still unfolding. Before we proceed, share your location in the comments and subscribe, as tomorrow's story is one you won't want to miss. The seatbelt sign was off, yet the tension in row 14 felt more constricting than any restraint. Major Michael Harris occupied the aisle seat, his posture relaxed, his tall frame slightly turned to give the window passenger space. He hadn't spoken since takeoff, offering only a courteous nod to the woman in 14B when she sat. Still, her unease had been growing since departure, now reaching a boiling point. She shifted once more, arms tightly crossed, legs angled sharply away, as if his mere presence posed a threat. The flight was steady, engines humming, with soft conversations and the occasional chime of a call button filling the cabin. But beside her, it felt like a battlefield, her glances sharp, jaw clenched, breaths short, eyes darting to the black duffel under his seat, as if it held danger. Michael sensed it, of course, not just her sidelong looks or rigid posture, but the deeper shift, the subtle charge that trained operatives learn to detect before trouble erupts. He stayed still, silent, hands resting on the armrest, one thumb grazing his boarding pass, the other on his thigh, calm, deliberate, non-threatening. Experience had taught him that defending oneself too soon could escalate things faster than anything. A flight attendant passed, offering a distracted smile while checking belts and trays. Karen Thompson tapped her arm, her voice low but urgent. "Excuse me. I'm sorry. I don't want to cause a scene, but the man beside me makes me uneasy." The attendant blinked, caught off guard, then leaned closer. "Is there an issue?" "I don't know. He hasn't said anything, but something feels wrong. I think he might have a weapon. He keeps reaching for his bag." Michael didn't react. He kept his gaze forward, jaw now tight, chest rising slowly under his gray sweater. The attendant looked down, then at him, doubt flickering in her eyes. Michael met her gaze for the first time. "Is something wrong?" The attendant hesitated. Her training urged de-escalation, neutral questions. But the woman beside him was breathing faster, twisting her fingers, fueling unease with every glance. Behind them, a man across the aisle leaned forward, observing. A teenager one row up paused her phone game to glance back. "I need you to keep your hands visible, sir," the attendant said cautiously, striving for an even tone. "A concern has been raised. Could you open your bag for me?" Michael blinked slowly, once. He didn't respond immediately, letting the silence stretch just enough to draw attention before speaking, his voice low and precise. "What's the concern?" The attendant glanced at Karen, who avoided her, and locked eyes with Michael, now bolder. "He keeps touching his bag, like there's something inside. I saw him check it 3 times before takeoff. He hasn't spoken. That's suspicious, right? He won't even talk to me." Michael's lips tightened. He hadn't touched the bag since boarding, just adjusted his seatbelt, checked his boarding pass, and folded his arms. But facts didn't matter when fear had already taken shape. "Sir," the attendant pressed, her voice firmer, tinged with rising tension. "We need to ensure there's no threat on board. Please open your bag." Michael didn't budge. "I'm not opening anything without a reason," he said, voice low and steady. "If you suspect a threat, contact the captain and follow protocol. I'm not agreeing to a search because someone feels nervous about a black man on a plane. The truth was out," stated plainly. His voice held no edge, only a calm that carried weight. The attendant straightened, startled. Karen inhaled sharply, leaning back as if his words confirmed guilt. "See? He's being hostile. He's confrontational," she said. The man across the aisle muttered something, ignored by the attendant. "I'll be back," she said, turning down the aisle. As she vanished behind the curtain, Michael leaned back, arms folded again. He felt Karen's stare burning into him, sensed the cabin's eyes trying not to gawk. This wasn't new. Not really. Airports, security checks, delayed boardings. It took different forms. But it always came. Now it was unfolding midair, 35,000 feet up, before strangers unable to look away. He exhaled slowly, deliberately, his fingers brushing his thigh near the jacket on his lap, where a compact, matte black, military-issued device lay hidden, locked to a secure channel no commercial network could touch. He hadn't wanted to use it, hoped he wouldn't need to, but he wasn't here to be shamed by fear disguised as procedure. When the curtain parted again, a male flight attendant returned with two others, and Michael knew the next moment would set everything in motion. The cabin's mood shifted, not from turbulence or mechanical issues, but from something quieter, more insidious. Fear spreading through glances, whispers, cautious posture adjustments, and the tightening silence where chatter once lived. As the three attendants approached, passengers tilted slightly to watch, without seeming obvious. Phones angled discreetly, fingers hovering over record buttons, not out of certainty but curiosity fueled by suggestion. The lead attendant, a man in his early 40s with graying temples and a forced, calm smile, stopped by row 14 and crouched, his voice low but firm as he addressed Michael. "Sir, I need you to stand." Michael didn't move, arms still folded, eyes fixed ahead. He didn't answer with anger, only the practiced restraint honed in rooms, vehicles, and countries where one wrong move could end a story no one would hear. "For what reason?" he asked, voice even. "A concern has been raised about your behavior, and for everyone's safety, we need your full cooperation," the attendant said. Karen leaned back, lips pursed, watching eagerly, as if vindication were arriving in uniform. "He's acting just like I said," she seemed to imply without speaking. "I've already stated," Michael replied, gaze steady. "I've shown no behavior. I've been seated, silent, and respectful since boarding. If you're acting on a passenger's unease, that's one thing. But escalating to a forced search without cause isn't about safety. It's about liability." The attendant straightened, jaw tightening. He glanced at his colleagues, a young woman trying not to seem nervous, and a man called in for support, but visibly reluctant. The lead tried again. "This doesn't need to be hard. We can take you to the rear of the cabin for a private talk." "I'm fine here," Michael said, voice steady, unmoving. "I'm not leaving my seat for a talk based on assumptions. If there's a real threat, contact the captain and secure the plane. Otherwise, this is targeted harassment, and you'll face consequences." His words, though not loud, hit hard, drawing more eyes. 2 rows ahead, a man fully lowered his newspaper. Across the aisle, a young couple whispered. The shift was palpable, the moment when it wasn't just about the woman's fear, but whether the crew would act on it. bending protocol to comfort at the cost of justice. The attendant glanced at the curtain, weighing whether to call the captain or keep pushing. He chose to push. "We're trying to avoid involving the cockpit," he said, voice stiff. "But we have the authority to search a passenger's belongings if there's a credible concern. And I have the right to refuse an unlawful search without cause," Michael replied, calm and still. "You have no warrant, no probable cause, no specific behavior to point to, just someone's discomfort with who's sitting next to them." Karen scoffed, leaning in to ensure her voice carried. "Unbelievable. He's refusing a search. That says it all." Michael turned slightly, meeting her eyes for the first time since boarding. His face showed no anger, no condescension, only weary disappointment, the kind that said he'd seen this too many times. "You know nothing about me," he said, voice low. "You decided who I was before we left the ground." "Now you're acting like you're hiding something," she retorted. "I'm protecting something," he replied. The attendant cut in, voice rising to quell the tension. "Sir, this is your final warning. If you don't comply, we'll restrain you until we land and investigate further." At that, Michael moved, slowly, deliberately, not aggressively, making the younger attendant step back. He reached into his lap, under the folded jacket, and placed a small object on the tray table, a sleek, black, military-grade satellite phone, unmistakable to those who recognized it. The cabin didn't erupt, but a silent ripple spread as passengers glimpsed something unfamiliar and unexpected by the crew. The lead attendant's mouth parted slightly, unsure whether to call for help or pause. "I'm making one call," Michael said, eyes fixed on the attendant. "I suggest you wait." He dialed with his thumb, raised the phone to his ear. No speakerphone, no threats. Just a brief, flat exchange, too calm to be casual. The call lasted less than 10 seconds. He set the phone down and looked up. "Now," he said, "we wait for the captain." The attendants froze, unsure whether to act, speak, or retreat. Karen glanced sharply between them, her mouth tightening as confusion grew. Something had shifted, its weight undeniable. The silence post-call was denser, stretched tight across the cabin, barely containing the mounting tension. Michael stayed still since placing the phone, his composure unshaken. But the room's dynamic had changed. The phone's presence and his calm, cryptic confidence unsettled the crew, their plan now tangled in unanswerable questions. Uncertainty was fragile in the air, especially when stirred by fear. Karen leaned back, eyes darting to the phone, as if it might activate. Her unease had sharpened, not just fear, but the sting of losing control as her claim slipped away. Her voice was tight, no longer quiet. "He just used a device I've never seen. Who was he calling? What did he do? Are we just going to sit here?" The lead attendant turned to her, visibly uncertain, but her words sparked reaction. Passengers, previously silent, watching, recording, began murmuring, less sure of the threat's source. Yet fear often picks sides before facts arrive. The younger male attendant stepped closer, voice low. "Sir, hand over the phone." "No," Michael said simply, tone steady. "It's secure equipment, not for civilian inspection." "I'm not asking," the man snapped, grasping for authority he didn't fully hold. "You're overstepping," Michael replied. "You're not law enforcement. This isn't a threat. You're reacting to a passenger's discomfort, nothing more." The lead attendant, now sweating, leaned in. "You don't dictate our response midair, sir. You brought a military device on a commercial flight and refused inspection. We must protect all passengers." Michael held his gaze, unblinking. "I've done nothing to threaten that. The only threat is the one you're creating." The lead hesitated, then whispered into his comms device. Moments later, the curtain parted. 2 more crew members appeared, followed by the captain, broad-shouldered, late 50s, eyes sharp, face taut from years in pressurized cabins. His expression was unreadable as he neared row 14, assessing with a pilot's calm. "What's the situation?" he asked, voice even but edged. Karen spoke first. "He used a military phone after refusing a search. He acts like he's above the law. I don't feel safe." The captain looked to the crew. The lead attendant nodded stiffly. "He refused inspection, then pulled out a secure phone. He claims he's a government official but won't verify anything." Michael met the captain's eyes, steady. "You don't want to do this." "I want my plane to land safely," the captain replied. "If that means securing a potentially hostile passenger, I'll take that risk." "You're making a bigger mistake than you realize," Michael said, voice low. The captain didn't flinch. "You're being restrained until we land." Before Michael could respond, the male attendant reached for his seatbelt, while another grabbed his wrist, not roughly at first, but with finality. Michael tensed, but didn't resist. Not out of fear, but because the call was made, and the rest was out of his hands. Passengers gasped as he was pulled into the aisle, forced to his knees briefly for restraints to be secured. The captain stepped back as the crew unzipped his bag, searching with clumsy urgency. Inside, nothing alarming. A paperback, folded documents, a watch and a sock, and a government ID badge they missed in their haste. "Nothing here," one murmured. But the damage was done. Michael, restrained, knelt like a suspect amid strangers, the engine's hum loud against the cabin's silence. Karen stared, her confidence wavering as she faced the reality she'd helped create. "I warned you," Michael said quietly, eyes on the captain. "You'll hear from someone soon, and you'll understand who you just restrained before witnesses." The captain didn't reply, turning back to the cockpit, shoulders stiff, mind racing through unconsidered possibilities. Michael was lifted back to his seat, still bound, silent. The phone sat untouched on the tray table, and as the plane flew toward Washington, the tension shifted from one woman's suspicion and the crew's misjudgment to the looming consequences already in motion. Michael sat upright, shoulders back, wrists bound, the plastic cuffs biting with every move. The silence turned acidic, heavy with stares, judgment, and conclusions drawn by onlookers. The crew returned to their posts, but no one moved on. Not them, not the passengers, not Karen. She kept staring, posture rigid, mouth tight, as if daring him to speak. When he did, his words cut sharply, making the row behind stiffen. "Feeling proud now?" he asked, turning slowly, voice no longer patient. "Think you did something noble?" Karen blinked, caught off guard, then crossed her arms, ready for this. "I did what I had to." "You were suspicious, secretive, avoiding the bag search." "You mean I was minding my business?" he shot back, voice low but heated. "I didn't speak to you, didn't glance your way. Yet that's enough to get me dragged out like a criminal. Sound right?" "You pulled out a military phone," she snapped, facing him. "Who carries that on a plane?" He shook his head, laughing bitterly. "You know nothing about me. Not my job, my life, or what I've done for this country. You saw a black man looking serious and called it danger. That's all this is." "I didn't see race," she said quickly, voice rising, face flushing. "Don't make this something it's not." "No race?" he repeated, laugh sharp. "Sure about that? You didn't call the crew when the white guy across the aisle checked the overhead bin repeatedly. You didn't react when the man 2 rows up dropped his bag, mumbling about batteries. But me? I sit quietly, say nothing, and you're certain something's off. You were tense, checking your watch, your phone," she countered. "My flight was delayed. I've got a DC briefing. I'm tracking time. Professional, not dangerous. But you got nervous, and made the whole flight revolve around your fear instead of checking yourself. She scoffed, eyes narrowing. Now you're a martyr? No, I'm a man tired of this same story repeating, he said, voice rising. You don't get to call me a threat, then play victim when it backfires. You humiliated me, got me restrained before everyone, and still think you're the wronged one. Karen leaned closer, fury in her eyes. You should have cooperated. Normal people do that when they've got nothing to hide. What? Let you feel right so you sleep better? I don't owe you comfort or explanations. You saw me, judged me, and loved watching them restrain me. She hesitated, chest heaving. You're a joke, she muttered, voice shaky. No, you're the joke, he said, leaning closer despite the cuffs. You threw a tantrum midair because the world didn't center on you for 5 minutes. Now you're mad your lie's unraveling. I didn't lie, she said. You're pathetic, he shot back. That broke her. Her hand shot up, slapping his face with a crack that echoed like a gunshot. Gasps rippled through the aisle as his head snapped sideways, cheek reddening. He didn't flinch, yell, or blink, just turned back slowly, eyes cold, steady. She stood, trembling, chest heaving, realizing what she'd done before witnesses. Michael said nothing more. He didn't need to. The weight of her action settled over the cabin like a storm waiting to break. In the cockpit, a sharp, urgent voice, not from the tower, crackled over the radio. The call had connected. The moment lingered too long for such a public, violent act. Karen's hand hovered, as if she hadn't processed slapping a restrained man before a packed cabin. Her eyes darted, seeking support, some sign her fear still justified her. But no one spoke, nodded, or looked at her the same. Michael stayed silent, still bound, the red mark fading but the sting of humiliation lingering. His jaw was set, his eyes no longer polite but certain. He wouldn't need to act. Consequences were coming. The captain's voice, tight yet calm, came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, remain seated. We've received a priority message from air traffic control and will adjust our course. Flight crew, report to the cockpit now. The 4 attendants hurried behind the first-class curtain, whispering. The captain held the radio, staring at a coded message on his console, face pale under the cockpit lights. It wasn't a threat or advisory, but a Level 2 override from the Department of Defense. Do not detain passenger 14A. Pentagon clearance confirmed. Comply immediately. Captain to issue public apology. No delay. The captain read it twice, voice low, almost apologetic. Is this real? His first officer didn't reply. None was needed. Few had access to that code. The man in 14A had turned the crew into players in a federal blunder. In the cabin, Karen sat slowly, hands shaking. The slap hadn't resolved anything, hadn't contained her fear. The silence grew heavier, not judgment, but anticipation, as if all awaited the fallout. It came. The captain emerged, his composed expression hollow, walking straight to row 14, where Michael sat, arms bound, eyes forward. He stopped, took a breath, and spoke for all to hear. Mr. Harris, he said, using the name from the badge found in the bag. We've received communication from national defense authorities. You shouldn't have been restrained. I apologize for the misunderstanding and treatment you've endured. The truth was clear. No corporate vagueness, just fact. Too late to undo the damage. I've ordered your restraints removed immediately, he continued, voice stiff, glancing at filming passengers. Anything you need. We're at your disposal. Michael turned slowly, face unreadable. Return my bag, he said, voice flat. The crew complied, placing it beside him with nervous hands. The cuffs were cut, and Michael stretched his wrists, not from pain, but to reclaim control, emotion louder than words. Anything else? The captain asked. Not yet, Michael replied, eyes elsewhere. The captain nodded, retreating down the aisle, each step heavy, his authority exposed as lacking. Karen stayed silent, head down, cheeks flushed, jaw tight, feeling the real stares, not suspicion, but the weight of her public mistake. The descent to D.C. was the quietest flight Michael had taken, not from sleeping passengers or dimmed lights, but from a silence born of embarrassment and realization of a deeper issue. At 35,000 feet, the captain gave only standard landing announcements, no further apologies or explanations. The issue had escalated beyond the crew's level. The attendant stayed out of sight, whispering behind the curtain, avoiding the aisle unless necessary. Karen, once vocal and indignant, sat still, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the seat back, as if she could vanish before landing. Michael remained calm, no gloating, no scanning for reactions, no reaching for distractions. He sat, arms folded, occasionally glancing out as DC's lights appeared below. He didn't need to speak. His words had reached those far above this plane. On landing, no clapping or relief came, just the hum of tires on the runway and bodies shifting. The plane veered from the terminal to a restricted tarmac lane where two black SUVs waited by a small hangar. 3 men in suits, earpieces visible, stood with unreadable faces. As the plane stopped, no jet bridge extended, just stairs lowered from the belly and a warning silence. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain said flatly, "remain seated. Federal personnel are boarding for an unrelated matter. Do not disembark until instructed." The words chilled the cabin. Michael stayed still, but saw the shift, heads turning, eyes widening, breaths held. Those who judged him now watched with guilt and curiosity, realizing they'd backed the wrong person. The first agent boarded, suit crisp, expression calm, eyes scanning until they found Michael. He nodded subtly, and 2 more agents followed. "Major Harris," he said, polite but firm. "We apologize for the delayed response. We're ready to escort you off." Michael stood, retrieving his bag with quiet dignity, contrasting sharply with his earlier treatment. The crew stepped aside. Passengers stared openly. Karen watched, eyes hollow, lips parted, unsure whether to speak or shrink. He paused briefly, looking at her, not with anger or vengeance, but cold disappointment. "You should be ashamed," he said quietly, "for her alone. And don't think you won't face consequences." She didn't respond, her face pale, fingers gripping the armrest. As Michael exited, agents flanked him, not as a threat, but as a wronged man restored to his place. An SUV door opened. 1 agent held it. Others stood watch. Inside the plane, another group boarded, not for Michael. They summoned the crew. 1 attendant trembled, following them to the rear. The captain looked hollow as he was escorted off. The lead agent announced an investigation had begun, placing the crew on immediate leave. Karen Thompson was called last, her name spoken over the intercom with commanding certainty. She stood slowly, hoping for a mistake, but 2 agents met her at the front. "Karen Thompson," one said, showing her photo on a tablet. "You're detained under 18 U.S. Code 111 for assaulting a federal officer on duty." She gasped, voice failing. "What? I didn't know who he was. He didn't say." "Doesn't matter," the agent said. "You struck a federal operative. That's enough." Her voice cracked as they led her down the stairs, her cries lost to the wind. Passengers watched in stunned silence as she vanished. No cheers, just an earned silence. The footage spread online before Michael's SUV left the tarmac. Grainy videos from 3 angles showing the slap, restraint, his quiet rage, and the shift after the captain's call. It outpaced the airline's response, driven by blunt headlines. "Veteran humiliated midair after false claim. Pentagon confirms passenger was operative. White passenger detained for assaulting black veteran. By morning, clips dominated news cycles. Anchors recounted timelines gravely. Analysts debated hate crime charges. Social media exploded. Millions of views, trending tags. #, Major Harris, #, flying while black, #, no fly for Karen. Celebrities, veterans, and politicians voiced outrage. By noon, the airline's stock fell 4%. Its social media replies disabled. The airline's initial apology, polished, sympathetic, blameless, flopped. Critics called it empty. Passengers gave interviews. A woman cried describing Michael's calm, saying, "He never raised his voice. They wouldn't leave him alone." A man in his 60s said, "She shouldn't have been heard." She weaponized fear, and they enabled her. The Pentagon's confirmation of Michael's role escalated the story beyond one incident. It wasn't just profiling. It was a symbol of a broader truth. Respectability, service, and a clean record didn't shield you once suspicion took root. Michael's first public appearance wasn't grand, just a single, unedited interview on steps near the National Mall in a dark suit, no tie. The reporter asked softly, "Would this have happened if you weren't black?" "No," he said, pausing briefly. "I've worn the uniform, served overseas, risked everything. But that meant nothing when I sat next to someone who didn't like my appearance. That says something about where we are." His calm, precise words carried weight. No moralizing, just truth. "I didn't demand firings or arrests," he said. "But actions have consequences. If I'd slapped her, I wouldn't have reached the ground unharmed. Everyone knows that." The clip spread faster than the original footage, translated into 6 languages, subtitled globally. Editorials and op-eds followed, with the Washington Post declaring, "Major Harris didn't seek justice. He embodied it." The airline scrambled. The CEO's filmed statement admitted failure, promised reforms, and suspended the crew, announcing mandatory bias training. No one applauded. Performative apologies were too familiar. The public wanted accountability, not branding. Karen's name was erased from flight databases. After booking and bail, her attorney blamed post-pandemic anxiety and miscommunication. The public rejected it. She lost her job at a consulting firm. Her community group banned her. A leaked arrest recording, her yelling, "He didn't say who he was," worsened her case. The Department of Transportation launched an inquiry into airline profiling. Congressional leaders demanded oversight of in-flight discrimination protocols. An independent aviation review board gained support to prevent another Major Harris incident. Michael stayed quiet, declining most interviews, avoiding social media. His story spoke for him. Weeks later, his name still resonated in headlines, shows, and think pieces. But he moved on, not from indifference, but from knowing action spoke louder than applause. His Pentagon work resumed quietly, classified briefings, meetings, his voice back where it mattered. But his broader impact grew unexpectedly. An old contact reported a young black man in Seattle detained at the airport en route to a cybersecurity summit, questioned for hours despite credentials, nearly sent home. Michael made a call, not public, but direct to a deputy director. Within 24 hours, the man received an apology, rebooking, and a clearance line. No press followed. The man didn't know who helped. Michael didn't seek credit, just results. He did it again. A Chicago mother flagged for last-minute flights, added to TSA's expedited list. A Nigerian PhD candidate nearly deported over a visa glitch, fixed before the university acted. He wasn't changing the world, but he opened doors others couldn't. He declined speaking gigs, 3 documentaries, and a civil rights award, always saying, "That's not the point." He wanted change, not fame. Quietly, he built something bigger than himself. Airlines shifted. New federal guidelines emerged. Training modules rewritten. Bias screenings added. Security staff retrained. A profiled man's story ended not in apologies, but in structural change. It didn't erase the slap, the cuffs, or the humiliation, but it ensured a pause next time, a chance for the right question over the wrong assumption. At a community event, Michael sat as a guest, not a speaker, at a youth mentorship program for leadership-focused high schoolers. He listened more than spoke, deflecting praise with nods. A 17-year-old girl asked, "Mr. Harris, are you always so calm when tested?" He smiled faintly, from experience, not confidence. "Not always," he said, "but I know the cost of losing it." She nodded, scribbling, then looked up. Was it worth it? All that happened? He glanced across the gym, where veterans and kids laughed. "Ask me in a year," he said, "but it's a good start." No cameras captured it, no posts, just people trying to improve. That was enough. A quiet invitation came through back channels. A mediator believed a meeting could matter. Michael didn't need to agree. Karen wasn't part of his life or work. But the idea lingered. A reckoning, not for him, but for her understanding. He said yes. They met in an Arlington office, neutral, private, no cameras, a table, 2 chairs, untouched coffee. Michael sat, hands folded, steady. Karen entered, unsure, expression tight, as if she'd rehearsed and discarded openings. She sat, fidgeted with her sleeve, then spoke. "Thank you for coming." He nodded, silent. "I know you didn't have to," she said softly. "I'm not expecting anything. Just wanted to speak without lawyers or microphones." Michael waited, giving her space. She breathed deeply. "I can't explain my thoughts on that flight. I've replayed it endlessly, read articles, seen footage. Seeing myself through your eyes makes me sick. I wasn't scared because you did anything. I was scared because you didn't. You were too calm, too quiet. That's on me, not you." She paused, hands twisting. "These 2 months have been a hole I dug, fired, charged, mocked. But the worst isn't the consequences. It's knowing I reinforced harm against people like you for generations, without realizing it." Michael leaned forward, voice steady. "Ever think what it's like to explain yourself before being misunderstood? To know you're judged before speaking? That's what I felt when you stiffened. I knew what was coming. It's happened before, maybe not so loud, but always there." She nodded, eyes down, listening. "I wasn't shocked when you called the crew or when they believed you," he continued. "What shocked me was how far they went without questions, acting like I'd done something with no proof. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," he said. Not gently, not cruelly, just fact. "I slapped you," she said, voice breaking. "I don't know what took over. I wanted to win. Felt humiliated when the captain apologized. Instead of facing that, I turned it on you. I'll regret it forever." He nodded, calm, unreadable. "I've read about you," she said. "The reforms, the quiet help. You didn't chase fame. You just helped people." "That's what we do," he said simply, "especially after living it." She looked at him, not with fear or defense, but understanding. "Can I do anything?" she asked. He paused, then said, "Sorry's just the start. Want to help? Talk to people like you, those who'd swear they're not the problem until they are. That's where it begins." She nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you for coming. You didn't have to." He stood, smoothing his jacket. No anger, no victory, just closure. "I didn't do it for you," he said. "I did it for the next time." He left, door open behind him. At Reagan National Airport, Michael stepped through sliding doors with a leather bag and folded jacket. The terminal buzzed with travelers, announcements, no stares, no whispers, just quiet he welcomed. Security passed smoothly. The agent paused at his ID, then nodded. Not dramatic, just acknowledgement. "You're safe here." Michael nodded back, moving on. A TSA supervisor watched the line, adjusting her headset. Seeing Michael, her eyes softened. "Mr. Harris, welcome back." "You know me?" he asked, not unkindly. She smiled. "I know what you did. Our staff just finished training based on your case's protocols." He met her gaze. "Good," he said. "That's what counts." She offered a handshake. He took it, then walked on. The short flight to Raleigh was for a veterans mentorship initiative for at-risk youth. No speaking role, just a seat at the table, his preference. Boarding without fear, seen without judgment, felt new or overdue. The crew treated him like any passenger. No tension. A young attendant guided him to his row with ease. Michael sat by the window, stowed his bag, and watched runway lights fade in daylight. His thoughts drifted, not to the incident, Karen, or reforms, but to people he'd met, their quiet stories, strangers finding courage in his silence. Justice was done, messy, flawed. This was more, a shift in how people might pause before assuming, might ask instead of accuse. He didn't need applause or trends, just knowing someone might board, sit, or speak without their skin being a signal. As the plane taxied, Michael pulled a worn photo from his jacket. His unit, years ago. Young, tired, dusty, arms around each other. Some were gone, others scattered. But the photo reminded him why he fought. Not with weapons or words, but presence, patience, and belief that dignity was expected, not requested. The plane climbed, Michael holding the photo, DC shrinking below. Meetings, laws, and training continued below. But the world had watched, and something shifted. In the quiet cabin, no suspicion, no accusations. A man once humiliated for existing flew free, story intact. He pocketed the photo, folded his arms, and let the silence settle. Earned, not heavy. I hope you enjoyed this story. Share it with friends, and subscribe for the next one. I've picked 2 more stories you'll love. Have a great day,